Every morning, the digital landscape suggests a world in the process of fracturing. Borders in Eastern Europe are being redrawn by force, proxy conflicts are flaring across the Middle East, and domestic polarization has reached levels that suggest a total breakdown of the social contract. Populist leaders in the West have become the primary focus of this friction, appearing to dismantle decades of established diplomacy with single decisions. Meanwhile, Eastern rivals maintain a different tempo. These leaders execute continuous military and economic strategies built on a view of history where conflict is a permanent, unavoidable state. This collision is most visible in the Middle East, where asymmetrical warfare and proxy networks are managed by military figures who operate entirely outside the traditional rules of the nation-state. Most analysis treats these events as a series of unprecedented, random crises. It assumes history is a linear narrative, and that the current level of global instability is a strange deviation from the norm. Predictive history offers a different model. It views human movement not as a story, but as a rigid dataset governed by the laws of game theory and the recurring patterns of ancient philosophical software. Global instability marks the transition phase of a hegemonic cycle, the calculable point where the cost of maintaining an empire's global network finally exceeds its economic output. Empires operate on a mathematical rhythm of ascent, overextension, and decline. These cycles function independently of the individuals who believe they are in control of the government. Within the framework of game theory, nations act as nodes in a network, adjusting strategies to maximize utility based on resources. When the British economic node fragmented in the 20th century, the American node expanded to fill the vacuum, simply reassigning the network's center of gravity. Internal social friction follows the same logic. Class struggle and the critique of capital emerge at precise mathematical intervals, when wealth inequality within a node reaches a tipping point, creating a predictable state of internal instability. Decisions that appear purely political, like the 1971 removal of the dollar from the gold standard, are actually moves on this board, designed to artificially extend the currency's dominance and delay the inevitable contraction of the psyche, and mathematically constrained by resource yields. Their long-term geopolitical moves remain predictable to anyone analyzing the system's data. Predicting a move requires looking at the player's internal logic. You must analyze the nation's operating system, the ancient philosophical code that dictates how it perceives reality. The Western operating system is programmed by the linear progress models of Kant and Hegel. Its source code is found in the foundational epics of ancient Greece, where concepts of individual agency and tragic destiny were first recorded. This classical philosophy defined the parameters of the state and the ideal republic. Even now, these 2,000-year-old definitions limit the strategic options that Western leaders are capable of imagining. Contrast this with the Russian or Eastern operating systems. These are built on a framework of deep-seated fatalism and cyclical suffering, where the survival of the collective is prioritized over the rights of the individual. In the Middle East, these operating systems collide with eschatology, theological systems focused on the end of the world. This means that conflicts involving the US, Israel, and Iran are frequently driven by ancient messianic code rather than modern resource management. History shows that revolutions occur when the hard economic NAS of the game board crashes into the ideological myths of a nation's operating system, forcing a violent update to the national code. Modern trade wars and border disputes are merely the physical execution of these 3,000-year-old philosophical programs. Modern geopolitical friction mirrors the structural failure points of the Bronze Age collapse, where complex trade networks reached a level of vulnerability that made a systemic reset the only possible outcome. The institutional decay and political factionalism we see today followed the exact structural pattern that preceded the collapse of the Roman Republic. This overextension of military force across global frontiers replicates the final days of the Hellenistic and Byzantine empires, where the center could no longer afford to defend its periphery. High levels of internal socioeconomic friction and the radicalization of political factions serve as the primary indicators of a system reaching its final transition point. When wealth inequality markers from Thomas Piketty's research meet the elite overproduction triggers identified by Peter Turchin, the internal pressure on an empire becomes a calculable countdown. According to the Curva Oceanica model, the restructuring of global power is the mathematical resolution of these pressures. Psychohistory uses these systems to anticipate the restructuring of power before the first shot is even fired. It moves the focus away from the individual leader and toward the tectonic shifts of the dataset. Viewing history as an interconnected system of game theory and myth replaces the noise of the daily newsfeed with the signal of the long-term cycle.